As Nadia just shared, I'm the Director of Education and Experience, and I am a woman who identifies as she, her, with fair skin and blondish hair. Today, I'm wearing glasses, a black top, and large green earrings. A little bit about SEGD if you're not familiar with our organization. We are designers of experiences connecting people to place. We are a multidisciplinary community. We are graphic and exhibition designers, fabricators and architects, media developers and creative technologists, students and educators. Each of our members bring a diverse set of expertise, but we all share the common motivation to make the built environment more inclusive and intuitive, emotive and engaging, sustainable and shared. Our SEGD Tools webinars provide valuable insights into technical information spanning various practices and specialties. Each session offers key takeaways that can be integrated into your professional toolbox. This webinar series is free for all of our SEGD members, so if you are not an SEGD member yet, that is an amazing perk to have. And now I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Kite Kim, co-founder and designer of Foviate. Kite is an experiential architect and co-founder of Foviate, a sales and engagement platform for architects and designers to pitch, present, and win, most importantly, most projects. After working for a half decade across art, experiential, and architecture, Kite really realized that there needed to be a better way for creative art professionals to communicate their vision of a space or experience to those decision makers, giving them clarity into a proposal and thus allowing them to release funding for a project with enhanced trust that design team. Kite, welcome.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Kite. I'm a Korean American male in his 30s with long black hair, wearing a black collared shirt. So I'm just gonna share my screen now and structure and deliver it. And then how, once you get that project, you can both maintain your creativity and cater to the client's interests at the same time. So I'm Kite. I studied at the University of Michigan from 2012 to 2016, where I studied architecture and art and design. Right afterwards, I was an experiential architect and visualizer, and then an interactive developer at Studio Lozano Hemmer, which is a fine art and media artist studio up in Montreal. We are represented by Pace Gallery. A lot of the projects I'll be showing today are from that studio. And then I would later go on to start my own agency in the creative technology space, and then finally co-found Foviate 2022, which is what I do now. So now at Foviate, what we do is we make tools to help designers communicate the value of their work in a way that clients can not only understand, but then also fund. So a lot of the things that we make our Foviate are a myriad of different tools and services that are supposed to help these aims. And then at the side, we also still do experience design as well. So designing these spaces, interactive systems, visuals, things of that nature, all the things that the good people here at SEG do as well. So why should you trust me? I've worked on hundreds of design proposals across fine art, architecture, and experiential. I've worked on giant art fairs and museums, airports, Archimedes facades, had my own agency I was telling you about, and started Foviate. I've made a lot of mistakes. So hopefully you guys can learn from the mistakes that I've made and not make them yourselves. This is just a picture of me working on an installation out in Manchester back in 2019 where I was programming the whole media server system after designing the venue. And this is that venue I was talking about. This is out the Manchester International Festival. This is a project in Montreal, a giant sonic installation of hundreds of speakers, a project here in Washington, D.C., and then another project in Mexico City. That's the Archimedes facade. And then another shot of this museum show in Korea. We'll be showing you some of these projects. So let's get started to what makes a good client. Now, good clients are few and hard to find sometimes, but they can really make this job worth doing if you find one. Whereas I think we all know that with bad clients, they can really make you question everything about getting into this industry at all and why you picked this project. So it's very important to figure out what makes a good client for you and how to keep working with them. So this case study will actually be about a project in Washington, D.C., a Planet Word Museum, which hopefully the SEGD team who's located in Washington, D.C. has been to. This is at the entrance to the Planet Word Museum, and it's an artwork called Speaking Willow, which I worked on while my time at Studio Lozano Hammer. It's an interactive sculptural tree that consists of around 400 speakers, all at different heights. And as you walk underneath this tree, these cameras up here, they track you and they will play a different language of the world above your head. So each one of these speakers is a different language, and we try to get basically all the living languages and a couple of dead ones that people don't really speak anymore, like Latin. So what's the key to finding a good client? It's really seeking alignment. So what does that mean? Uh, the client for this project was Anne Friedman. She was the founder and CEO of the Planet Word Museum. Anne was actually a former English teacher, and she had very, very specific views on education. Um, and that would actually be the key to how we won this project. So we were shortlisted and asked to propose an artwork for the entrance to this museum, along with about a dozen other artists. So Public Art Fund was selected to go curate a short list of artists, and then give them an RFP that all these artists could compete on, and then propose different artworks for. Local projects did the interior of the museum, creating the installations within the museum itself. But they really wanted a landmark public outdoor installation that could be something that people interact with and see before they enter the space. Anne really wanted something where even before they enter this building, they get a taste of what's going to happen inside. Um, with Planet Word, it was actually used to be a school beforehand, which is one of the reasons why I was selected, and then renovated into the museum. So Anne, being a former English teacher, she actually wrote this letter, and it's titled Planet Word, A New Kind of Museum. And basically in this letter, she tells you exactly what she wants, right? She's saying that museums excel in informal education, and her being a former school teacher teaching English, she doesn't think that the classroom is the only place where people should learn. Being dictated to by a teacher at the front of the room is not how everybody can learn. And more importantly, it's not what education should be limited to. So that really informed the concept of Speaking Willow is how can you educate people about languages without just being told, here's what languages are, right? So with this tree, people use their bodies to learn about these languages of the world, right? As they walk underneath the tree, they don't have to do anything, but the languages are whispered to them. So each one of these speakers was hung uh, around 12 to 16 meters above your head, which was the range of the audible volume of the speakers. And then you were really invited to walk around and be able to hear the different languages. And, the faster you move, the more languages you hear at once. The slower you move, you can really listen to each one. Each speaker had a little tiny micro SD card with, I believe, 6 different audio clips on it. So you could listen to these different clips of different languages around the world. And uh, you really got to experience it physically. And I really think that's why we won this project compared to some of the other artists who were competing for it, because it was really hit the values of what Anne was talking about, right? That learning, and especially learning languages, should not just be a teacherly didactic experience, but something that can be embodied and absorbed very organically, intuitively. And there's Rafa, the artist out here in the back. So before your next RFP, ask yourself, does this client and project feel right for me? Do they align with the values? And will they steal my energy or boost it? I think we've all been on projects where we've thought to ourselves, oh man, the money or fame or clout of this client is so good. Like we should just do this for the brand name. And inevitably we get stuck working with them for, like a year or more, multiple years, working on a project that we hate, even if it's for a lot of money, we just feel like it wasn't worth it, right? So I think that's really important is A, finding good clients that who align with your values, finding a way to work with them. And if it truly is a good relationship, just like it is with dating or something like that, then it's going to continue. You're going to keep working with them. You will find ways to help each other. So even if it isn't a really high budget at the beginning, you'll find that they're more invested in helping you, and together you can help each other grow. So that's really important when it comes to clients. And also, as designers, it can be very difficult to acquire new clients. So as much as possible, you should try and um, work with the same clients continuously throughout your career. So one thing you should definitely do with clients is be qualifying your opportunities. And the easiest way you can do this is by using a scorecard. So we were able to increase our win rate by 25% plus by just not chasing every opportunity. Not every lead that comes knocking on your door is going to be a good fit for you. And chasing them down uh, also could be pretty detrimental. So for example, let's say you're an owner at your firm and you have a team. If you are putting your team on every single RFP and making them come up with design proposals for each opportunity that comes through the door, they're going to get burnt out and your win rate's going to go down. So typically people who do this, they have pretty low win rates, let's say like somewhere around 20% and maybe even lower. That means 4 out of 5 times they lose. And that could be pretty demotivating to your team. It does not feel good. You don't want to put them in that situation. It's a very easy way that you can just screen out bad projects that'll suck your energy out. Just to use a scorecard like this. But how this works is you score each of these items from 1 to 10. So creative freedom. How much creativity can you get on this project? Is this super corporate project? They're not going to let you do anything. You're just going to score that lower. Prestige. Does this client, have some sort of brand name or clout that you want to utilize? Let's say that it's a project for the Smithsonian. Okay, that's a great brand name. So that's probably like a 10, for example. Budget. The higher the budget, the more you get to play with. That's a higher score. Ease of execution. This can be the really difficult one where a lot of us designers, right? We want to do the cool, fancy new thing, but oftentimes it can be really, really difficult to execute for the team, and that can suck a lot of their energy away, right? So ideally, you want to be doing about 80% of your projects that are pretty easy for you guys to do and allow your team to have a good quality of life. And then timeline, which can also be hard for experiences sometimes, is how much time do you have to actually fulfill this task? Is the ask too big for the amount of time you have left? No, that's something you should really consider. So if you average out all of these, if anything is an 8 or above, that's great. You should definitely propose for it. If it's a 7 to 8, that's where you're kind of like, if you really want to do it, then you should apply and create a proposal. But if it's below a 7, I generally recommend not to do it. So after you do that, and you've now gotten to a 7, let's say 7.5 or above, that comes the actual proposal. But what makes a good proposal? We're designers, right? So we've been trained in a certain way. We have certain tastes when it comes to aesthetics, right? So we want to have some really obscure but amazing font, right? With some really high quality renders, maybe a couple of GIFs for movement, right? Eye-catching. These are all tactics, but they're not actually what make or break a proposal. So here's a big myth of design proposals that I see all the time, and I used to be very guilty of this as well, is I used to think that having a super long proposal, say like 40 pages long, with all the information, tons of high quality renders, fancy design language about how we're going to have an interstitial space that activates something. I really thought this is what makes a good proposal. This is what we're taught in school. This is how professors speak. But it's not really how it works, and it's not what communicates clients. So while that speaks as creativity to our peers, to people like us, it's not necessarily what speaks to a client, right? We like to think that the more creative our proposal are, the fancier it looks, then the more impressive it is to a client, right? And that my idea and my aesthetic will outshine someone else's. But the truth is, it's not a meritocracy, right? Someone with the highest quality renders and the $2,000 custom font and the best slide deck design, they're not necessarily going to win. And that goes back to the client reasons that I was telling you before, but how we were able to connect with Anne on that level that actually mattered to her that she wrote about in that letter. So the purpose of a really good design proposal is to get clients excited about working with you and understanding what you're going to do for them. So with that proposal for Anne and that project, right, what we did there is that we got her excited about the idea of creating an art installation that was a kind of quasi-organic looking, very intuitive and friendly, a tree. B, something that people could interact with without thinking, right? They're using their bodies. It's very natural for them to do, especially children who she used to teach. And then it speaks well to the organization, right? Where for Planet Word, they have this public outdoor thing that people can experience without even entering the museum itself. So it's solving multiple problems for her. And you got to remember that at the end of the day, clients, stakeholders, they're not creative people. They're not designers like you are. They don't understand space. They don't understand scale. They don't understand the value of design necessarily. You have to communicate that value to them in a way that they can understand, they can feel, and speaks to them in their language. So examples I like to use are we only know the value of a doctor after we've been sick, a plumber after your toilet is clogged, and a barber after a bad haircut. Then we really understand the value of what they do, right? So we need to do the same thing as designers because what we do is not a necessity like a doctor or something like that, right? It's not life or death. So we need to take extra care and communicating that value. So one simple way I like to do this is simply having a checklist of sections to have in your proposal. uh, you want to make this proposal and think about it from the perspective of your client, right? Put yourself in their shoes. So the first thing to do is reframe all language as benefits for them. So I call this design goals. So you can see in this GIF here, the very first thing I have design goals. And there we have a short paragraph about how this design is solving the client's problem. Part two is the design concept. So this is the flashy renders, right? This is the cool visuals, sketches, drawings, paintings, what have you. This is where you inspire people emotionally, right? So the key to persuading anyone really is emotions based, right? Once they're hooked emotionally, like we did with Anne previously, then they're really going to be a want a part of this, and they're going to listen to you, and they're going to convince themselves that this is a good idea. Specifications is start where you start to get more technical. This is about how this solution is very specific to them, right? How these materials, this particular design technique, these speakers with this interactive sensor are going to be specific to this site, to this project, this client, to this interaction, right? And then a team section, which I can't stress enough. I find a lot of people miss out on this is it's not just about showing, who's the CEO of this company, it's showing why you and your team are the ideal people for solving this problem. What is it about your backgrounds, past projects you've done, your demeanor, your cultural history that makes you the best for this? So, Raphael and the other programmers on the team had done lots of language-based projects before. We had developed a lot of Sonic installations before. We had done other permanent work before. So talking about all of those context team also gave good reason to why we should be selected to win this project, and then justifying rational facts and figures. So this is where you provide the numbers that justify the uh, emotional section you had before, the design concept, right? So now that they're hooked emotionally, they need to basically confirm this, right? And this is where they kind of go look at the other members of their team and they say, oh, this artist has had 10,000 people a month come to his exhibitions in the past. Okay, clearly they know how to get people through the door, or they've had over 10 million views on social media, right? These are the numbers that you can provide that show uh, the confirmation of why they should work with you. And here on the right is just an example of the new Foveat proposal generator and kind of how we put all these together for people so that they can understand these things in order and in sequence. So another thing you have to do in a good proposal is give clients clarity. And like I was saying before, they are not designers, right? You have to really empathize with them, use your designer empathy here for your clients, not just for the audience who's going to be viewing your work, but for the stakeholder who's deciding about your work, right? They don't know how big 10 feet is. They don't know what an MP4 video is. They don't know what Touch Designer is, right? Um, it's your job to explain to them what those are and then why they matter. So you can use tools like 3D walkthroughs, videos, or virtual reality, and we use all of them at Foveat in my past career to really give clients an understanding of the project. And a client who understands what's going to happen on the design project is the one who invests, right? They need to feel like they get it in order for them to go put down, $1 million to go do this work, right? So the more you can do to give them an understanding and that clarity, the better. So when I was at Raphael's, something I really got to experiment with there was virtual reality. So we were using this is back in like 2016. So Unreal Engine 4, VR headsets. I would go fly to a client and give them a virtual walkthrough of the piece before they actually experienced it. So for Anne, that's exactly what we did. I flew there with a big computer and a Pelican case, this VR headset, and I got to put her inside of it and walk her through the experience, walking up through the renovated architecture, going up to the tree, being able to hear the audio that was playing, look at the materials, the galvanized aluminum tubing, the clear silicon bells, little speakers, right? See the bench that people would sit on, the ivy growing on the tree. So it just felt real to her, right? And even though it's a representation of what's actually going to happen, right? And the inside hasn't all been figured out yet, it gives her that trust and that clarity of what it's going to look and feel like. And I can't tell you how many people experience a virtual reality tour and then go experience the real thing a year or two later and say how closely the finished thing resembles the virtual pre-visualization. And it's something that you can do to communicate these very messy things very intuitively. So at Fovi, we also have our own 3D previews engine that we use to describe to people where projectors are going to go in a space, how the graphics on the wall are going to look, how big something is, right? So we can walk people through these scenes very intuitively. And that allows them to understand what's going to happen and be okay with the money they're going to spend on a project. And what that does is that it stops them from value engineering, right? All of a sudden, the conversation switches from, "Ooh, how can we bring this price down?" to "How can we make this better?" Right? And oftentimes, they can even increase the budget because they want to improve a certain thing, right? And they're sold on that idea. All right. How can I balance the creative practice client interests? So this is one that can be really hard. A lot of times, we're working with the client and we're working on a project, and all of a sudden it starts to kind of go awry. Whether it's budget cuts or something happening outside of it, outside of our design situation, right? Project gets interfered with a lot. So why does that happen? What happens is that clients pick whoever they trust the most to be able to solve their perceived problem, right? And the key word here is perceived. And it's your job as the designer or head of your firm to figure out what that perceived problem is and how they feel about it. Okay. Uh, a lot of times with us as designers, we say we're solving a design problem for a client, right? We're just solving, let's say, the challenges that they have with their lobby, where it doesn't feel welcoming enough, it doesn't create the right brand value. And those are problems that would be in a brief or an RFP. They're oftentimes not the actual problem in the client or client's minds. So let's say you're working on a renovation or an executive briefing center for Amazon or like one of these big corporate companies, right? There's a lot of layers of people you have to go through. There are tens or dozens of stakeholders this project has to pass. There's oftentimes one key person who's your contact that you're working with, right? And they're kind of relaying the information and concepts that you produce to these other people that are having discussions, and this person's getting back to you. So you might think that you are solving this hard technical problem of making this space nice, creating a cool installation, something that's impressive, but that might not actually be the real problem. And that's not what your team has to solve, but what you, as the main project lead or business owner, has to solve. So I'm going to show you this one case study back from a project we did in Korea. This was at the Amoy Pacific Museum of Art in Seoul. So Amoy Pacific is one of the largest skincare and beauty companies in Asia. Any like Korean skincare products you see, like it's probably a subsidiary of Amoy Pacific. So they're huge. And they were creating a new headquarters in Yongsan, which is I don't know, kind of like the Tribeca of Seoul, a very new, fancy central neighborhood. And they kind of wanted to be like a Japanese or French beauty company, right? Where they don't want to just make beauty products, but they want to attain a cultural relevance, more on the luxury level. So this is back in 2018. They commissioned David Chipfield, who's world-renowned, I believe, Pritzker Prize winning British architect, create this huge new headquarters in Seoul. So this is like, a 15-story massive building with custom landscaping, like multi-million-dollar project, right? They had these huge modern spaces. The top floors are offices and elevated parks, and then the basement uh, and multiple levels below are a museum. So they wanted to create this museum so that they can be viewed as a not just a beauty company, but something even more than that, right? And all those artworks help elevate their products and their brand level to their audience. So they really wanted something stunning for the entrance to the museum that draws people to go underground because all the basement levels are where the art spaces are. They're not on the higher or ground levels. But trouble almost ensued, or trouble ensued, and the project almost ended before it began. And the reason why is 2018 was a very tense time between Korea and Japan. A trade war was breaking out. So basically, for those of you who don't know, Japan had colonized Korea from 1910 to 1945. It was pretty brutal colonization. They tried to basically wipe out all Korean culture and assimilate Korean people into uh, Japanese culture by making them learn Japanese, removing their Korean names, and removing Korean uh, symbols. Um, and whether it was like tigers a big symbol of Korea. They were trying to get rid of that. They're trying to outlaw all instances of the Korean flag. So it was like a really bad time. And it's something that they never apologized for after World War II. So imagine this is, decades long um, tense situation conflict. And all of a sudden, 2018, a series of events had broken out, and basically Koreans decided to boycott all Japanese products, companies, and symbols. You really could not be seen using anything Japanese, playing Japanese video games, watching anime. Like it was something that all Koreans kind of came together and said, "We're not going to do this because something insulting that the Japanese government did recently," um, which was unfortunate timing for us because the artwork that we had already pitched and proposed to the head curator, Jung-Ran Kim, was this glowing orange and red sun. Um, which if you've seen the Japanese flag, their flag is literally a red circle, which is called the rising sun. So this really became a flashpoint for us where the curator was like, I can't show this artwork because it's literally a red sun, which is the symbol of Imperial Japan, colonization, oppression. So it became quite a heated discussion because of this. So what did we do? We had to really pivot very quickly and creatively reframe how we were going to do this project. So we knew the creator really liked this piece that was established before this trade war debacle had begun. But what was her real problem, right? What was her perceived problem? It wasn't that we needed an artwork for the lobby. It was that she couldn't be perceived by the public or her stakeholders as supporting any sort of Japanese symbolism or ideology, especially as the first new modern museum in Korea that was for this luxury brand, right? That was worldwide and important as a Korean symbol of business, right? So what did we do is that we thought, oh, the sun is actually about 5,800 degrees Kelvin, aka a bluish white hue that only looks to us yellow here on Earth because we're millions of miles away. So what we did is, the original version of this piece was called Solar Equation that was taking all this data from NASA of different red and yellow spectrum light photographs of the sun and turning those into parametric color arrays to show. And instead, we found all these different blue and white spectrum green colors from NASA and then reprogrammed the whole artwork to look and use that color profile. And then we renamed the piece Blue Sun. So Blue Sun was only for Korea and we never showed it anywhere else, but it became a way that we could give to the curator basically a new version of the piece that solved this problem for her that she could now take to her board and say, hey, we're not doing that red rising sun anymore. We've changed it to this new version of the piece that's using this blue spectrum that is totally different. And if you've ever seen the Korean flag, it's both red and blue. So, it's kind of an easy way to be like, oh, this is actually the other side of that flag and explain to them that we were going a different direction and that this was going to be unique to not only Korea, but to the APMA museum itself. So I want to encourage all of you to have what I call the creative solution mindset. So not just solving design problems creatively, but thinking of solutions to client problems creatively as well. And the truth is, as designers, we love to solve these design problems, whether it's, creating signage or a particular circulation path through a space or a custom installation, stuff like that. We're good at that. That's what we were taught in school. But the truth is, almost any designer can do that, right? With varying levels of um, how good you are at doing those. But the really, really successful designers and design firms are the ones who can solve their clients' problems. That's not something we like to talk about, right? That's not something you'll ever see on Design Boom or DZine. You'll never see it on RAA's website. But oftentimes, that's how you get these projects made. That's how you get a curator or a client to go from just being a friend and companion who may or may not say no to being somebody who's actually your partner, right? Who's invested in solving this problem with you. So you need to put yourselves in their shoes again and think about what is stopping them from greenlighting this project for you. We're Designers are incredibly creative people, but a lot of times they can fail to realize that they need to use their creativity in not just the design sense, right? But rather in this framing, positioning exercise of how can you position yourself and your creative solution or your design solution rather as the solution to not just a design problem, but to the larger problem on the client's mind, right? Because when they go to sleep at night, when you guys are working on a project, they're not thinking to themselves, oh man, the circulation still isn't right yet, right? They're thinking, oh man, like my board is hounding me and they're not letting me put this artwork in. Like, how am I going to get through this? You need to help them there and give them the tools, language, media, um, design that they can go bring now to these other people and give you the green light. So, some key takeaways and we still have some good amount of time left. But good clients are the ones who are aligned with you and your values. So you can just ignore the ones who don't. The ones who don't, they're really going to suck a lot of your time and energy away. Creating proposals is not easy. Chasing clients is not easy. It takes a lot of work. You who are on the biz dev team or the firm owners know this. You can waste a lot of time and energy chasing people who aren't taking you seriously. So you should do the same and really use something like the scorecard to qualify whether or not this is going to be a good opportunity. Really think about this client that you're chasing and ask yourself if they're right for you. Um, Again, dating is kind of the best example here. Don't just chase somebody who's hot, right? Chase somebody who actually feels like they're going to be a good partner, someone who feels like you want to date and actually have a relationship with. Because at the end of the day, you want to be finding people that you can maintain a long-term relationship with. You can help each other grow. Their business can do better because you help them. Your business can do better because they can help you, right? So this is where you should really focus on screening clients out. And for bad clients, right? The ones who are always trying to knock you down the price, the ones who don't seem to respect your creativity, who don't treat you right, they're gonna ruin your life. So you should really try to avoid them as much as you can. Okay, proposals. So good proposals are the ones that get clients excited to work with you and give them clarity about how to be transformed and benefit. So transformed is a key word here. So basically, why is the client coming to you? They have a problem and they want to get to the other side, right? They are in a current state where they're not enough and they want to get to somewhere where they're going to be better, right? So the benefit is how you're going to enable that transformation, right? So let's take that a more specific example. They're just a beauty company, but they want to be this kind of luxury art and high-end boutique feeling company despite being a corporation, right? So how can we help them get there? They also want to do it while being true to themselves, right? While not appearing like they're pandering to Japan or appearing in a way that's is negative to them, right? So you have to help them do that as well. And then, yes, creativity isn't just the design itself, it's also in how you can achieve the and solve the perceived problems of your client, and then position your design as the solution to that problem. So key to that is really talking to your clients a lot, maintaining constant communication. This is where the phone calls really come in handy, right? Just calling them up, seeing how they're doing, not necessarily making it about business per se, but finding out what's on their mind. Because if you talk to someone a lot and practice this with your we do this all the time with our friends and partners and family, right? You just talk to them and eventually they're going to tell you what's on their mind, what's bothering them. And for you as the designer, you need to now recognize that this is what's sitting on their mind, and your design solution has to address that cloud there, right? So talking with them a lot, keeping in constant contact, and really just shooting the shit, as they say, is a good way to figure out what's actually the real problem there. Um, in the case of Speaking Willow, Anne did write this letter, and that was instrumental in us understanding her values. A lot of times clients are not going to be that clear. So they'll put out an RFP and they'll say all the common things, right? Like, we want to make a landmark, we want to be sustainable, we want to be friendly and welcoming. Those are all just kind of empty platitudes, right? Everybody says those things. You want to find the actual meat behind that stuff, right? What's actually going on behind the scenes? What's actually the problems? And then go solve those. So I've done hundreds of RFPs, and eventually I realized that the RFP process is brutal. It's incredibly time consuming. It's very tedious. It's very expensive. So it's not something you should uh, just go jump ahead and do every single time. It shouldn't be taken lightly. You should qualify these clients, qualify these proposals, figure out if they're worth doing. And the more work you can do before you even make a proposal to figure out this information about your client, whether it's reading these letters they posted like Ann did, whether it's calling them up and just letting them speak and figuring out what's on their mind. This will all be instrumental for you actually developing the final design proposal and then filling out those design goals that I listed previously earlier in this presentation, right? So if you find out their values, their true values that maybe they don't even know about, right? Um, and we've designed questionnaires to help people do this. The more you can figure out what's actually the crux in their mind, what's the key to unlocking basically them greenlighting your project. And we've realized over doing so many of these proposals that these things can cost like $30,000 of your time, labor, specialist, software. So you really need to think about whether these are worth doing before you actually jump in and execute. And our goal now with Ovate is to be able to solve this problem, right? And because proposals aren't just sending PDFs, like there should be a better way to do this. So that's what we're working on next. And this is the end of the talk. So thank you everybody for joining me and listening. Hopefully you got a lot out of this. This QR code here goes to my LinkedIn, and I write all about this kind of stuff on there about how to win proposals and marketing on LinkedIn and Substack. I'm Kite Designs on all the socials, so it doesn't matter Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, what have you. I'll be on there. And if you guys are interested about what we're doing with design proposals, uh, please join us at fovate.com and sign up for our waitlist. We'd love to talk with more designers and design firms and show you guys how we're trying to revolutionize the RFP process for both design firms and stakeholders and basically streamline the whole thing. So it's not just creating a 50-page deck every single time. But yeah, thank you, everybody.
Kite, thank you so much. That was so fantastic. I'd like to let everyone know to go ahead and put your questions in the chat. We'll go ahead and collect them and share them with Kite to help us with this moderated discussion. But to get us started, I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Yeah. So you kind of talked about like what makes a good client versus not, and you did outline some of those red flags.
Mhm.
But maybe you can share a little bit more. Like, are you doing outside research? So is it like that first impression, or are you looking elsewhere for that research? Are you reviewing any kind of I don't know, like what is defined to you as like what are some of those red flags, and how do you kind of circumvent that and educate yourself of, what to be aware of?
Sure. I'll give you a couple examples. So I have this one really great client. His name's Peter Arbor. He's the CEO of Liquid Wall, which is a sustainable building facade technology company. So basically, they make like a liquid mold injected concrete facade panel that just can go up like a curtain wall system. And that sounds very dry on paper. So when I met Peter in person, I was asking him like, Peter, why did you start this company? This is so interesting. And he was saying, "Oh, well, I've been a facade architect for 20 plus years, and I just see the same designs over and over again. All the cities around the world are looking the same. They're just these flat, super tall skyscrapers. And for Peter, he started off in the theater world, right? He was designing sets. And it was only when the National Endowment for the Arts got defunded for the first time back in the 70s that he was complaining about that he was like, I'm just going to go into facades because I can't really survive as a theater designer anymore. And for me, working in the arts, I was instantly like, dang, Peter, I want to help you. Like, I just know that we get along. If you've worked in the arts for a long time, but also you started this whole company just because you want to make cities more beautiful and more sustainable. Like that's amazing, right? So that's someone where I'm like, I don't even care how much money like we're going to be working on this project together with, but like I'm going to find a way to help you. And I figured out his problem, which is he was trying to raise the next round of funding and get a New York State project to redo project housing. So it wasn't these, terrible, ugly brick facades. They're all degrading since like the 40s, but could be replaced with his curtain wall system that was beautiful. They can be designed with basically any design, whether it's like Art Deco or neoclassical, Parisian, what have you. So I was like, I definitely want to help you get this done. Um, so finding out all that information about Peter and his background by just asking him why he's doing these things was a big impetus. And then I'll give you an example of a bad client. Okay, I had one who first of all was a referral, and this goes ahead and proves that not all referrals are good. From a client I do like, where she's like, "Oh, I have uh, this friend of mine who's also an architect doing step one because usually luxury projects I'm not super into, but I decided to take the call anyway. And then I found out that basically she was using freelancers from Fiverr before, but they weren't cutting it, and she really had felt like she was wrangling them. And my old client had warned me she can be pretty intense and very micromanaging, right? So these were just like all red flags. And then eventually, when I got to the call, and she was saying she really wants these super high quality renders, and we got down to price, it became clear that she wanted the highest quality work for like Upwork level prices. And I was just like, well, I can't do that. And then she negotiated me down from my price that I usually do to something slightly cheaper. And it just ended up going terribly. It was a horrible relationship. Sometimes you have to fire a client. And it made me realize that I never should have taken that project. I remember complaining to my co-founder Ian later. I was like, dang, we never should have done that project. Like that actually sucked the life out of me, and I feel more burnt out despite us making money than I did previously. So these are all red flags, we've seen before, and you can just feel them, right? When you're in a conversation with someone where you don't feel like you're having a good time, you feel like this person's your friend. The communication you have can be, well, whether it's over email or phone call, can be not very pleasant, right? So these are all signals to look out for. And that scorecard will really help you because sometimes things can feel a certain way in the moment, but once you sit down with something like the scorecard and you're able to create a very objective number of whether or not this is a good idea, right? Um, then that can really help you make a decision. The key is to actually listen to the scorecard, which not a lot of people do as well. So, for example, I bring this back to dating all the time, right? I think all of us have gone on a date with somebody who we thought was very attractive, but had so many red flags, and we were just like, the red flags. If there was, something that told you, oh, this person is like not a good match for you, it's a 54% chance this is going to go well. You should probably be like, oof, that's not good. Um, and that could just be one date, so that's not big of a deal. But if you get this project, right, that could be a year or two long. Um, Agreement that you have with them that now you're obligated to keep working with them. So that is just a huge time suck.
I know, and I think that's such good advice because the problem is if you sacrifice your fee the first time, it's going to be expected every single time after, and then
Right.
all of a sudden you just like shot yourself in the foot. And it's not
Hmm.
your fault. I mean, like that. that is like a common challenge I think all designers and design firms run into, right? Because like you want to please the client, you want to have this great rapport, but in the end, it sucks the life out of the leaders and the team, and then it like kind of reduces the quality of what the like the value, right? It reduces your
Hmm.
value, which is not right.
Hmm.
So that's so you mentioned you've had to fire or cut ties with clients. Do you have any like high level recommendations of if you find you had definitely too many red flags and everybody would be better off moving on? Do you have any like good recommendations of how to handle that professionally and in a way that's not going to create bad press for your firm after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, I think it also kind of goes back to dating, where you kind of want to like just give them everything that you've worked on, and this also depends on the contract that you've signed. But with a client like this, we just tried to basically wrap up the project as quickly as possible and be like, "Hey, here's the final assets. I think it's probably better if we don't keep on working on this in the future." Um, you can either do it that way, or if you don't want to be that direct and like actually cut them off, just tell them you have another obligation, right? You have another project in the pipeline. You just simply can't keep working with them for XYZ reason, right? And that one is kind of the easier sell too, because, and this goes back to dating. I always bring it back to dating, but it's kind of like, oh, I'm dating somebody else now, right? What can
Right.
they say to that,
Right.
right? And especially you actually are doing another project with a different client, you can just kind of say that and specify. But
Yeah, I think that
yeah,
that is a good tactic. Yep. Because it also sounds like one is busy, which is a good thing from a PR standpoint for your own firm.
right.
Because
Busy
everybody
is
should,
good.
yeah, busy is real good. Exactly.
Hmm.
We had a great question. I want to say it might be Vio, it might be the person's name. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. And they said, thank you so much for sharing. This is an amazing presentation. Can you share how you find initial clients when you started in this industry and maybe you don't have a lot of connections and like what's that best way to meet potential clients?
Yes. Okay, this is a great question. I would say that, I had to start over when I moved from Montreal back to New York. So, I was working at this art studio for 6 years. I worked my way up there. That's a whole different country, right? It's not that far away, but it's a whole different country. So you don't really have any of the same level of connections. And, Montreal is its own bubble, it's its own world, right? They're not necessarily interfacing with the US and places around the world that significantly. So I would say that when I came to New York, I did have to start from scratch, and I was really trying to be more in the larger experiential and ex design and architecture world. So what really helped me was groups like this, SEGD, and figuring out like who comes to these, right? Like looking at the people's names in here, figuring out, what are the events and conferences that people go to. Well, that client I was telling you about who was great, Peter, I met him at the Built Worlds conference, which is a construction technology conference. Um, and then also, I'm a big fan of doing what other people are not. So if everybody is trying to source clients from the same pool, you should go somewhere else and somewhere where your value is more designed. So the only reason I got that job in Montreal is because Raphael was giving an artist talk at University of Michigan. And I decided to, write him a cold email. I made it super weird. It's about Brexit. And I was like, you should probably hire me because I know you're really into social justice and stuff like that and politically motivated art. Um, and I just pitched myself and I was like, you're working on these super large scale art installations and you don't have an architect on your team. You should hire me to be your architect, right? Someone who can visualize, design things with space, design permanent artworks, right? And these are all things that he had never thought about, right? There was no job description for this person. But I was able to shoe myself in there. So for experiential, this is where you can maybe look at other industries, right? Like, kind of depends what you want, but let's say you're a firm and everybody wants museum work, right? Cultural work is the sexiest work, but it's the lowest budget. You might actually be better off going to medical, right? Going to like the Mayo Clinic, who also invests in installations and artworks and stuff like that. and good experiences for their hospitals and being like, hey, we're gonna just specialize in hospital work. Then you should go to like a medical architecture conference, right? Meet people from Da Vinci who make the Da Vinci like surgery robots, right? And be like, oh yeah, we specialize in operating rooms, being a great experience in like telesurgery, right? So this is a way that you can get super uh, niche and then really just focus in on yourself and where you want to go. I've made all the mistakes of trying to cast a huge net and talking to people in fashion and video games and footwear and all this and then retail and being like, actually, I don't really care about those, right? Like I like working in architecture. I like working in experience design. Like this is where I want to be more than those other avenues. So really narrowing your focus down and working hyper locally could be good too. Looking at all your local businesses. For those of you who use Rhino, I met Bob McNeil like a couple years ago, and I was asking him, like, Bob, he's the inventor of Rhino, like, how did you guys start Rhino? And he was saying, well, we started off in Seattle, and a lot of shipbuilding is here. And it just so happened that we got lucky and people heard about us and they're like, wow, we need like the best CAD modeler that can make any curved shape to make our boats because boats are all curved shapes, right? And it's like, wow, if they were not in that location, like who knows if they would have made that connection or not. So they really did get lucky there. But working locally and spreading the word locally is a good way to get the word out about what you do and who you should work with. So if you have that thing of here's my niche, I work in naval architecture. I'm here in Seattle. I know that's a thing, right? All of a sudden, it becomes easier for you to be the experienced designer who designs the interiors of yachts, for example, right? So look at what's surrounding you, look at what people around there are asking for, or what they need, or what's missing, and you can fill in that gap.
That's so great. We have another question from Stephen Rosen. Stephen says, thanks for your insight on how you decide to move forward or not move forward with an RFP. That's great advice. And that they often find RFPs that they receive are ill-conceived or written by people who don't quite understand both what we do and what would be an appropriate process. And we were having a conversation just separately, just SEGD staff with Kite about this before the webinar. So, have you been involved in an effort to create a model RFP template for media and or experiential environments? This could really help level the playing field so that your RFP could be well orchestrated.
This is a great question, and it's something that we're actually working on now with the new version of Fovate. So that's what the waitlist is actually is for on the design firm side, a proposal generator, and then on the owner side, the people who create the RFPs, a way for them to create interactive RFPs that kind of act as like templates or forms for them to send out to designers to fill in and basically level the playing field between all of the different firms competing and then make it easier for the owners to compare them all. So that's something that we're looking into now. We'd love to hear from you, Stephen, about your thoughts and get inputs from SEGD and the community at large about how exactly this should look. But yeah, I've worked on a ton of these and they're very difficult for experiential in particular because our work is so media based. Like I showed you before, Fovate, the older previous engine is all 3D, right? It supports things like video textures and playing them on top of architecture. So that's something that we want to integrate into the proposal system so that you can upload not only the CAD model of a space, but the video work that's going to be in there. And then a client gets that 3D walkthrough experience within the proposal itself. So they can understand here's how it's going to look and feel, and then see all the other information about, deliverables, timeline, budgets, design goals, all that. So really want to like streamline this process for everybody because, like I was saying, it's such a tedious and expensive and honestly dumb process that hasn't been changed since literally 19, I want to say 20, when people first started using slide decks. I think it's important to remind ourselves that slide decks have only been popular for the last 100 years. First as storyboards, and then now as PowerPoint. And like we're still using PowerPoint. That stuff came out in the 1980s, right? Like I think we can rethink this process a little bit. And I love looking at old architecture presentations and proposals from like the 1800s because there are these beautiful boards or like illustrations of like hand drawings of plans with architectural sketches or like watercolors on top and like the information for the budget and stuff on the side. Like there are these giant diagrams, like they like hand out to clients and really give them the whole map of what a project is going to look like. I think, with the PDF, we all just kind of got defaulted to using it over the last 30, 40 years, but we don't have to do that anymore, right? We have technology to do this a lot better. So that's something that we're working on now is how can we, bring this to the 21st century.
That's great. Thank you. Well, Kite, thank you so much for presenting today. I think people really got a lot of information out of your presentation. Kite shared how you can get in touch with him. So please do reach out and thank you again. And we'll move on to some wrapping up announcements.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so the SEGD Conference Experience San Francisco is right around the corner. Our annual conference gathers interdisciplinary thought leaders in San Francisco this November 13th through the 15th to share inspiration, strategies, and ideas designed to enhance the human experience. So this San Francisco becomes the epicenter for this global dialogue, and it's set in a city for reinvention and radical experimentation. And we invite our attendees to rethink how design fosters care, equity, and collective authorship. Some of our speakers and contributors include folks from Airbnb, the Eames Institute, Google Quantum AI, SF MoMA, Volume Inc., Urgent Agency, and Bradley G. Monkowitz. So please come join us, and registration is now open. And our SEGD professional practice groups are available to all SEGD members. These are free for members, and they aim to foster development and innovation across a spectrum of experiential design. So this forum allows members to deepen that knowledge, connection, and to engage in various activities. So you can join all three. You can participate as often or as infrequently as you like. We have our digital and interactive media group. We have our museum exhibition and experience design, as well as wayfinding and experiential graphics. And here's a list of our upcoming SHD events to wrap up our year. We have another Tools in October. We have our conference in November, and then we have another Voices in November as well. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.